They waited for your reaction, not your answer, not your perspective, just your reaction, because that's where your power leaks, not in what you say, but in how quickly you say it, not in your opinion, but in your inability to hold it in silence. They don't test your strength by attacking your logic. They test it by poking your instinct. The moment your face changes, the moment your energy shifts, the moment your voice tightens, they win. And you lose everything you didn't even know they were after. Your mystery, your leverage, your dignity. You still think your emotions are honest. That if you just show them how much you care, they'll respect you. That if you just express how much it hurt, they'll stop hurting you. That if you just explain yourself, they'll finally understand. You were trained for emotional honesty in a world built on emotional warfare, and that's why you keep losing ground. You think they want truth? Number. They want access. They want the code to your reactions. They want to know what scares you, excites you, softens you, rattles you. Because once they have that, they don't need to overpower you. They just press the right buttons and let you destroy yourself. This isn't about being cold. This is about being calculated. And in some rooms, being unreadable is the only form of self-respect that still works. Because if they can make you feel, they can make you move. If they can make you move, they can make you beg. And if they can make you beg, they'll never see you as equal again. There are moments in life, precise, surgical moments, where your reaction is a test, not of your emotions, but of your discipline. Where silence is not withdrawal, it's control. Where stillness is not apathy, it's dominance. This is for the part of you that's done apologizing for feeling too much and ready to start showing less. Because there are 7 situations, 7 sharp edges in the human experience, where showing emotion doesn't heal you. It hands your enemies the scalpel, and they won't hesitate to use it. If you've ever left a room feeling disrespected and couldn't explain why, if you've ever told yourself, I should have said less, if you've ever been called dramatic, weak, or too intense just for having a reaction, this is where that ends. Because you weren't too much, you were just too readable. And now, we erase the blueprint. If you're still listening at this point, you're not the average listener. You're the quiet one, the calculated one, the one who's been hurt without closure and is done asking for it. Subscribe. Just don't keep living like they can read you. They don't argue to solve. They argue to see if you'll bleed. Every insult, every jab, every sideways glance, it's bait. And if you're weak, you'll chase it. You'll defend yourself, clarify yourself, over-explain your innocence. You'll flinch just a little, and they'll smile, because now they know where your leash is. You think you're standing up for yourself. You think you're making things clear, but all they see is a crack, a little panic, a little desperation to be understood. That's not strength. That's a tell. Understand this. Anyone who's trying to provoke you already knows they're wrong. They're not trying to win with truth. They're trying to win with pressure. Because if they can get you to react, you're no longer a threat. You're a toy. A predictable, emocional, self-destructive toy. Wind you up and watch you go. That's why they start fights in public. Why they raise their voice just loud enough. Why they wait until you're tired, distracted, or alone. Because they don't want the truth. They want to see if they can control the tempo of your nervous system. And if you rise to it, if your face shifts, if your voice tightens, if your hands start to explain, you've already lost. Power isn't in being right. It's in being unfazed. You want to be respected? Stay still. Let them talk. Let them escalate. Let them reveal everything they're afraid of, while you reveal nothing. Because the one who reacts first isn't dominant. They're dancing. And the one who dances second is leading. You'll notice something strange when you stop reacting. They either lose interest or they lose control. Some will get louder. Some will go silent. But none of them will be able to dominate you. Because domination requires access, and you're not giving it. When they say, you don't care, what they mean is, it can't reach you anymore. When they say, why aren't you reacting? What they mean is, I don't like who you're becoming. And when they say, you've changed, you nod, because yes, you have. This version of you doesn't bark back, doesn't explain, doesn't break character just to prove a point, because there's a kind of power that only appears when the ego goes quiet. And that power isn't loud. It's unreadable. It's dangerous. It's surgical. Let them throw their tantrums. Let them fill the air with noise. Let them search your face for emotion. You already know the truth. The one who needs a reaction is already beneath you. There are rooms where no one speaks, but everyone is listening. You walk in, and it's not the questions that test you. It's the pauses, the glances, the silence after your answer. They're not trying to understand you. They're weighing you, and they're not asking to hear your words. They're asking to see your tells. The worst kind of room isn't hostile. It's clinical. Smiles with no warmth. Questions with no curiosity. Interest with no invitation. These people don't want to know you. They want to assess you. How fast do you blink when challenged? How long do you hold eye contact? Do you shrink when dismissed? Or do you keep your spine tall? They're not listening to your story. They're scanning for weakness. This is how power works in quiet spaces. The one who needs to be liked loses. The one who over-explains loses. The one who breaks the silence first loses. You think charisma is about being expressive. It's not. Charisma is about restraint. True power is when your presence does the talking, not your emotion, not your excitement, not your nerves. The moment you try to impress them, you shrink. The moment you try to connect with them, you submit. And the moment you try to lighten the tension, you lose the only thing keeping you in control. Mystery. You don't owe the room your personality. You don't owe the room your comfort. You owe them nothing. Let them stare. Let them whisper in their heads. Let them wait for you to flinch. Because when you're comfortable in silence, they have nothing to manipulate. You are no longer the one desperate to be seen. You are the one watching them back. Your calmness becomes threatening. Your silence becomes unnerving. Your detachment becomes power. They'll start fidgeting. They'll start cracking jokes. They'll start over-explaining because they're now reacting to you. This is when everything flips, because stillness is not passivity. Stillness is pressure. When you don't give the room anything to feed on, they turn on themselves, and that's when they start respecting you. Not when you prove your worth, but when you make them wonder how much of it they'll never see. You don't rise in power by performing. You rise by preserving. Hold your posture. Hold your eye contact. Hold your stillness. Not as armor, but as strategy. Because in the rooms that matter, being liked is irrelevant. Being decoded is fatal. And being unreadable is survival. They already made up their mind. That's why they're accusing you. This isn't about truth. It's about submission. They want you to panic, to scramble, to fill the room with apologies and context and reasons. Because the moment you defend yourself, you've accepted the frame. You've entered their arena. You've agreed to prove your innocence, which means you've already accepted guilt. It's not the accusation that destroys you. It's your reaction to it. Because now, you look unstable. Now, you look reactive. Now, you look like someone who needs to be seen as good. And anyone who needs to be seen as good can be broken. This is why they accuse you in front of others. Why they raise their voice. Why they ask loaded questions with a smirk. They want the crowd. They want the tension. They want the spectacle. Not to destroy your reputation, to watch you destroy it yourself. Because your tone will change. Your face will tighten. Your posture will crack. And the people around you won't remember what you said. They'll remember how desperate you looked saying it. Understand this. When you're accused, you're not obligated to react. You're invited to react. And power is knowing when not to RSVP. They say you're cold? Let them. They say you're hiding something? Let them think it. They say, so you have nothing to say for yourself? Say nothing. Because in a world obsessed with image, with performance, with emotional validation, there is nothing more terrifying than someone who doesn't need to prove themselves. Silence isn't weakness. It's a mirror. Let them speak. Let them spiral. Let them build their case out of assumptions. Because the one thing they'll never have is your energy. When you show no emotional volatility, when you don't explain, justify, or beg, the spotlight shifts. The accuser becomes exposed, and the crowd starts to see through the performance. You want power? Stand there, still, unreactive, unbothered, unashamed, because you don't have to fight when you refuse the battlefield. You don't have to prove innocence when you don't accept their guilt. And you don't have to beg for dignity when you already walk in it. They didn't come for justice. They came for drama. Don't give it to them. Let them wonder. Let them get louder. Let them say it again, hoping you'll flinch. You won't. Because you're not here to be understood. You're here to be untouchable. There's a specific kind of silence that follows humiliation. Not the loud humiliation. Not the dramatic betrayal or the public disrespect. The private kind, where you realize you gave too much, trusted too fast, reacted too emotionally, played yourself. And now, they see you differently. And worse, you see yourself differently. Your heart's racing, your thoughts are weaponized, and your first instinct is to do something. Apologize. Confront. Escape. Fix it. But this is the trap. The second you act from that emotional spiral, you give it life. You give it power. You hand your self-control to the very feeling trying to break you. No one teaches this, because they think emotion is a right, a sign of humanity. But in power dynamics, emotion isn't a right, it's a leak. When you're losing control, the last thing you need is to express yourself. You need to observe yourself in silence, with detachment, with a kind of surgical coldness that makes panic shrink in its own shadow. Control isn't about pretending nothing happened. It's about letting nothing show. The person who can sit inside the storm without twitching becomes the storm. You feel the urge to cry? Don't. Not yet. Not here. Tears are not therapy in front of people who are watching you break. They are ammunition, and you know it. You want to yell? You want to explain? You want to clear the air? That's not healing. That's self-sabotage in disguise. When you're spiraling, say less, move slower, breathe deeper. Disappear if you have to, because the comeback doesn't happen when you're emotional. It happens when you're unreadable. You think strength is always standing tall? Sometimes strength is freezing, holding every volatile part of you in check until the fire passes and you can see clearly. The world doesn't wait for you to stabilize. It watches to see if you collapse. So don't let the emotion burn behind your eyes. Let it pulse in your chest. Let it rage in your limbs, but never let it reach your face. Never let it touch your voice. Never let them taste the chaos you're containing. Because once you master the art of appearing untouched, even when your soul is screaming, you've crossed into a version of yourself that no longer needs approval, only control. And that version of you cannot be manipulated, cannot be baited, cannot be broken. So next time you're losing control, don't ask how to feel better. Ask how to be still. Stillness is not repression. It's power under discipline. And, in a world addicted to reaction, stillness is godlike. They don't miss you. They miss the access. They don't regret what they did. They regret that it stopped working. And now, they're watching, not because they care, but because they're calculating. Every time you post, every time you show a glimpse of your life, every time you let a little emotion slip through, they gather data. They're not nostalgic. They're strategic, because this is what manipulators do after the damage. They step back and observe the wreckage, not to reflect, to recalibrate. They want to know, do you still flinch when they walk in? Do you still stalk their profile? Do you still post to prove you're happy? Do you still wear the heartbreak in your tone? Because if you do, they still own a piece of you. This is why you never show emotion in front of the one who broke you, because they're not reading it as vulnerability. They're reading it as permission. Permission to re-enter. Permission to manipulate. Permission to believe they still matter. Understand this? They don't need a response. They only need evidence. Evidence that you're still affected, still reacting, still healing around them. The moment you show sadness, they see it as validation. The moment you show anger, they see it as relevance. The moment you show love, they see it as an opening. And just like that, they're back in control, without ever saying a word. This is the psychology of silent warfare. When they know what you feel, they don't have to feel anything, because your emotions do all the work for them. So how do you win? By going dark, emotionally, energetically, digitally. No breadcrumbs, no posts, no secondhand messages, no reactions, no commentary, no performances of healing. You stop being a story in their head and start becoming a mystery in their memory. They can't stalk what's not being shared. They can't provoke what's not reacting. They can't study what's unreadable. When you stop broadcasting your recovery, you begin mastering it, and the power shift becomes irreversible. You're not cold. You're calculating. You're not bitter. You're impenetrable. And you're not over it. You're just done bleeding in front of the person who cut you. There will come a day they try to come back, not to apologize, but to re-establish the dynamic. And on that day, you won't be angry. You won't be nervous. You won't even be tempted. You'll look through them, not with malice, with nothing. And that, right there, is the emotional signature of someone who has become untouchable. Betrayal doesn't need to be loud. It's not always a knife in your back. Sometimes, it's silence in the moment you needed them. Sometimes, it's watching them stay still while you fell. And the worst part? You saw it coming. You just didn't want to believe it. So when it finally happens, your instinct is to expose the truth, to prove how loyal you were, to make them feel what they did to you. But that's not justice. That's a performance. And, in betrayal, the person who reacts first always loses. They don't deserve your sadness. They don't deserve your outrage. They deserve your absence. Because nothing scares a betrayer more than the person who walks away without explanation. No meltdown, no breakdown, no show, just silence. Because if they betrayed you, they were never afraid of losing you. But once you stop reacting, once you disappear into stillness, they finally feel the weight of your value, not in your presence, in your vacuum. And now they spin, they guess, they analyze, they invent versions of you in their head just to fill the void of what they no longer control. Emotion, that's your currency. Don't spend it where you were never seen. Let them drown in the consequences of losing someone who said nothing. Then there's the seventh and final situation, the one no one talks about. When you're tested in public, you're in a room. Someone disrespects you, subtle, sharp, and every eye turns to see what you'll do. They expect a reaction because that's what the weak give. Volume, emotion, justification. Don't give them that. Give them silence. Look once, then look away. No shift, no smile. No need to reclaim what hasn't been lost, because when you truly know who you are, you don't need the room to remember it for you. The moment you stay still while being tested, you become untouchable. Not because you won the exchange, but because you refuse to enter it. The crowd doesn't respect who speaks the most. It respects who doesn't have to. That's presence. That's psychological gravity. That's the quiet that moves louder than any voice in the room. You want revenge? Carry yourself like someone who never needed to react. Not because you didn't feel it, but because you knew the cost of letting them see it. Never let the world know when you're cut. They will measure your depth. Never let the world know when you're angry. They will adjust their weapons. Never let the world know when you're sad. They will redefine your worth. Emotion is sacred, so guard it, especially when it trembles, because in a world that watches, judges, and manipulates, your silence is not a lack of expression. It is the most dangerous language you'll ever speak.